So our character can run and jump, and it also has the most smoothest animation transitions, and it's looking pretty smooth. You know what make it look even smoother? VFX. In short, VFX stands for visual effects. This can mean many things, though the specific kind we're talking about for games is what's known as real-time VFX. These are the special effects you see in games complementing most of the animations and other things, decorating the entire visual. This is an important detail since it alone can make your games look a lot more polished than they would without it. Now there's various ways to make VFX. However, my favorite, which is the most versatile one I know, and the one which I'll be teaching in this tutorial, is the Sprite Sheets method. Miss Steven. I'm glad you asked. A sprite sheet is an image that contains all the stills of a 2D animation or a video. It's basically an image of an image sequence. Imageception. And each individual image in the sequence are called sprites, and by zooming in to one of the sprites and shifting the coordinates of the view onto the next sprite, you're able to play out the sprite sheet's animation. Apply the sprite sheet to a texture on the plane, and you basically have 90% of all the VFX work using this method. And you and I are going to be using this method to make a dust cloud when our character lands from jumping. Now there's obviously so much more it can be used for, like character footsteps, the jump itself, etc. However, this tutorial is just an example for you to understand how it works, so you can go off on your own and make just whatever you want. So, I can tell you're obviously already at the edge of your seat, eager to learn this amazing piece of game dev magic. Thus, let's begin. First, we're going to make the VFX itself. First, you're going to want to get yourself a dust cloud image, something like this. You can either make this yourself, or you can Google dust cloud and download one off the internet. I may put mine in the description, however, I think you can Google this. Even better if you have an art pen and you have a program installed like Krita, I think you can make this. The way I made this is I literally got the cloud tool and went bing, and then I made it. But you can download mine if you really want to. Now, obviously in the game, we want this to be animated. For example, we want this to fade in quickly when it appears and slowly fade out. And also we want it to rotate to give the impression that the dust particles are moving. So to animate it, what you're gonna do is you're gonna open up this blend file. And in this blend file, we're gonna animate our dust cloud image. And when we're done, we're gonna render the animation as sprites for the sprite sheet that we're gonna be making. Steven, what is this blend file, you may ask? Well, this is my object to sprite converter, which is part of my sprite sheet maker that I use for my projects like Sword Symphony and the other thing, and that I'm giving away to you guys for free. If you're watching this on any social media platform in which there's a description box, I put the link to that in there, so if you want it, you can have it. So download it. If you already have your own sprite sheet maker, then then what are you doing watching this tutorial? If you know how to make that, then you definitely know how to add VFX in your games. 100%. What are you doing here? You can go finish your AAA project or something. So now that you're in the blend file, one thing that you're going to notice is we're not actually in the RanGE engine anymore. In fact, we are in Blender. Blender 3.40 to be precise. If you have a version of Blender higher than 3.4, I mean, you can try follow these steps using that. I don't know. I think the steps that we're about to do here are compatible with the latest versions of Blender. So, I mean, try it out, I guess. But to be on the safe side, just download 3.40. So now we got that out of the way, add a plane, and then scale and rotate it so that it's roughly in the camera's view, and have it so that's just around, just smaller than the bounds of the camera. Then we're going to give the plane the dust cloud image. So go into the material properties, add a new material, scroll down in the material settings, and on the blend mode, click alpha blend. And then in the node editor, add an image texture, open the image and find your dust cloud image. And you can use the principal shader if you want by connecting the color to the base color and connecting the alpha to the alpha. Since I only want the dust cloud image itself with no additional shader information, I'm going to remove the principal shader and hook the dust cloud image straight into the material output. And for the transparent background, aka the alpha, I'm going to add a transparent shader and then join the dust cloud and the transparent shader together with a mix shader. I'm going to put the mix shader between the dust cloud and the output, put the transparent shader in the first shader input so the dust cloud image takes the second shader input, and with the factor slider I'm going to hook it up to the alpha output of the image texture, which will give us the transparent background of the image. This only works for images that have a transparent background, so make sure your dust cloud image is an image that actually has a transparent background. So now that we have our dust cloud image, it's time to now animate it. First we're going to animate it fading in and out, and to do that we're going to add another mix shader and put it between the previous mix shader and the material output, and then connect our first transparent shader to our first shader output so our previous mix shader takes the second shader output. And now with the factor slider we can control how much influence each of the shader inputs have over the output, with 0 giving the first shader input, which is the transparent shader, complete influence, and 1 giving our second shader input, which is our dust cloud image with the transparent background, complete influence over the output. Therefore, animating this factor slider will give us the fade in and fade out effect that we're looking for. So with your plane selected at frame 0, have your factor slider at 0, left click over the factor slider and press insert keyframe. Then select the shader so the keyframe shows up in the timeline. Then go around frame 25, move the factor slider somewhere around 0.7 and keyframe that too, thus completing the fade in part of the animation. And then select the first keyframe, which is when our factor is at 0, 0 and duplicate that all the way to frame 100, which will cover the fading out part of the animation. And now our dust cloud fades in and then slowly fades out. You can also make this a lot quicker by selecting the keyframes and scaling the entire animation down. And to know exactly where to get the keyframes, it's good to have a reference of a dust cloud to see how it fades in and fades out and moves around. I'm doing it off the top of my head, but I've done enough of these to kind of get the gist. So next we want our dust cloud to rotate to give the impression that the dust particles are moving. And we also want the dust to expand a little as it's moving. So to do both those things, go to the first frame, click I, and click rotation and scale, or location, rotation, and scale. Location isn't really necessary, but I mean, it wouldn't hurt. And then so that you can see how you're rotating your dust cloud, go to the frame where it's appeared and rotate it and scale it at the amount that you would have wanted it to have rotated and scaled by the end of the animation. Now obviously that's way too fast, so get the location, rotation, and scale keyframe that you just made, and you can move it way out, determining the speed that the dust cloud rotates and scales up. This seems to work well for me. I like the look of this. You can also change the keyframe interpolation of the location, rotation, and scale keyframes to have the transition be a lot more constant instead of how it was using the default Bezier interpolation where the animation curves from one keyframe to another. And yeah, this works pretty well for me. Afterwards, we're going to want to scale our animation to fit the bounds of the camera so that no space is really being wasted. So with your plane selected, go into the object properties, scroll up to Delta Transforms, and then scale up the plane from here so that the largest size that the texture is as close to the bounds of the camera view as much as possible without it ever overlapping the camera view. So for me, that's around about 1.4. As you can see, my dust cloud fades out when it's just as big as the camera view and it doesn't overlap over the camera view. And we are now ready to render our dust cloud animation as sprites for the sprite sheet that we're going to be making. So before we hit render, select your plane, click Ctrl C to copy it, and then under the list of scenes, go into the transparent scene and paste it in there, giving you an exact copy of the dust cloud in the main scene. To make sure all the settings are the same, go into the node editor and select the same material the original dust cloud is assigned to. This is important so that if you make any edits in the node editor to the original, they will also happen simultaneously to the copy since they're using the exact same material. And also if you make any edits to the object itself, you also want to have the same edits happen to both objects. So go into the object data properties and make sure the name of the data in the copy is the exact same as the data in the original. So if you move, let's just say this vertice like this, it's also moved in the original. And now after you've done that, it's time to render the animation. So go to render, click render animation, and wait for it to finish rendering all frames from frame 0 to frame 99. After the sprites have fully rendered, hop into the sprite sheet blend file in my sprite sheet maker file, go into rendered mode in the viewport shading options, and here you will see all the sprites that you've rendered over here waiting for you just like so. We obviously want to render this as an image, so go over to render, click render image, and wait for Blender to render it into an image. You can also tweak the resolution of the image. Personally, I like to keep it very high and then shrink the resolution afterwards outside of Blender. So for example, after Blender's finished rendering the image, you would go and select image, save as, and then save the image in the location in your computer where you want the sprite sheet. With the size being as big as 41.7 megabytes, open the file in something like Paint 3D, go into the canvas settings, change the settings from percent to pixels, let's get it down to something like 1024, then save it. However, if the initial render resolution was too high for your computer to even render the image, which can be the case sometimes if your PC is not able to render at these settings, you can always tweak the resolution from inside of Blender itself. However, I've always found rendering it super high and then shrinking it down externally afterwards actually preserves the quality of the image more, and sometimes it actually makes the file even smaller, which is better for a game's performance. So, now that we have our animation as a sprite sheet, it is finally time to bring it into the game. So to do that, first things first, open up the 100 sprites range file, and if you're on the timeline, you'll see on this example how our sprite sheet will work in the game. The animation of the sprite sheet is powered by this animation called 100 sprites, and for each keyframe, if we go over to the UV editor and look into edit mode of our object, what's happening here is, as you would expect, UV coordinates being shifted along in sprite order per frame. And all the magic is being driven by this object data node in the node editor. Since in the object properties, we're using the object colors values as X and Y coordinates. Red for the X coordinates and green for the Y coordinates. Hence why in the 100 sprites animation, you can see R color and G color. If you understood that, that is great. Then you don't really need to understand it since I've given away the entire thing for free, and all you really need to do are the steps I'm about to tell you right now. Select the example object with the sprite animation and duplicate it, and then change the name of it to landing dust cloud. Since this is the dust cloud we're going to have show up when our character lands. Give that name also to the object's data in the data properties, and then in the material properties, make a new material and call it dust cloud. Since you're likely going to be using the same dust cloud for all the other dust clouds you have, and thus they'll be also using this same material. As you can see, duplicating the original has made a new animation, and we don't really need that since we can just use the original, so unlink the new one and get the original. After, go into the texture properties, make a new texture and name this dust cloud just like the material, and then scroll down to the image settings, click open image and find the sprite sheets for your dust cloud. And if you're on the timeline, you'll see that it's now using the dust cloud sprite sheet. In the logic editor, you can go ahead and change the names of the game properties, sensors, and actuators, and also make sure that the action actuator is using the original 100 sprites animation. After you're done, select the dust cloud object and press Ctrl C to copy it, and then go into the range file where our game is, and in the viewport, press Ctrl V to paste the dust cloud object into the range file. And here it is. Go into the material properties and then the render pipeline options, and under all the casting shadow options, untick them all. Nice. Also in the material properties, you're going to scroll down to game settings and click backface culling so that it doesn't render the opposite side when it's running in the game engine. And we want that since we're always going to make our object face the camera, which means the backface is never really going to be seen, and thus not making the game engine render the backface, which you will never see, will help in optimizing the game's performance, making it run better. So now we want the dust cloud to spawn at our character's feet as our character lands from the jump. And to do this, we're going to need to have an object that's going to spawn all our character's VFX. So get your cursor at the center of the character controller and add an image empty. You don't necessarily actually have to have an image on this empty, though you can if you want to by going into the empty's data settings and opening up an image. But even if you don't, I still recommend using an image empty since it's the most easiest to select, and you're going to be selecting it a lot when working with the VFX. So now that we have that, go into the empty's object properties and name the empty something like character VFX, and then parent the empty to your character controller. And now we're going to add another empty, and this empty is going to have our VFX attached to it, and is what our character VFX empty is going to spawn the VFX. So since it's for our landing dust cloud, name the new empty landing dust cloud spawn. We're spawning capital letters so it's easy to see. And now we can arrange our landing dust cloud where we want it to be when the VFX gets spawned. So to help with this, get your character armature and get your landing animation and move it around so it's somewhere you want. And of course you can press Alt D to duplicate these so you can have multiple in 3D space surrounding your character's feet, which will sell the effect more. And as you're editing the position of these, you'll notice you'll be tempted to put them through the ground like this. However, this may not be what you want since it leaves a kind of ugly cutoff point at the intersection where it goes through the ground. So a way to still have the full dust cloud visible even though it's going for the ground is to go into the material properties, scroll down to the render pipeline options, and then in the Z offset, set this to something like, well, the higher you go, the more you'll be able to see it if it permeates through the ground. Usually I set this up all the way into infinity and that works pretty well. However, this may not be good sometimes if you have VFX happening through the ground that you don't actually want to see through the ground, and that's obviously not going to do very well. So setting it at something like 400 is going to be generally safe enough so that that issue doesn't happen. If you have made multiple dust clouds, be sure to name them in order. So for example, have the first one be dust cloud 1, the second one be dust cloud 2, the third one be dust cloud 3, etc. And if they are exact duplicates of each other, make sure they're under the same name in the data properties. After you finish arranging your dust clouds, it's now time to have them always face the camera in the game, since currently they're not doing that. So to make them do that, at each of their origin points add an empty and give each one the same name as the dust cloud with the word empty at the end in capitals, since these are the empties that are going to be holding each of the dust clouds and that our dust clouds are going to be connected to. And if we want to move our dust clouds, we're actually going to be moving the empties, not the dust clouds themselves. Similar to how when we want to move our character, we move the character controller instead of the character armature. So parent each dust cloud to their empty, and then for each empty, you're going to go in the logic editor, add an always sensor and an edit object track 2 actuator, turn the true triggering on for the always sensor and connect it up to the edit object actuator, and in the actuator settings, make the object the camera, enable 3D tracking, and make the track axis the negative Y axis, and have the same logic bricks for the other two empties. A quick way to do that is to select both of those empties, then select the object you want them to have the same logic as, then go to object, game, and copy logic bricks. And now our dust clouds face our camera from all angles. And now that we've done that, we can now parent our dust cloud empties to the empty that's going to be spawned by our character VFX empty. So I'll do that, just like so. And if we want to add even more to how our dust clouds move, for example, it would be kind of cool if they kind of wafted upwards as they appeared, then we can go into the logic editor of the dust cloud empties, add a motion actuator and connect it to the hand controller connected to our always sensor, and then just like in the previous tutorials as we've been doing for the character controller for its movement, we can apply motion to the dust cloud empty, just like so. And you can even have different empties have different motions, giving it a more randomized look. So I've gone ahead and done that, and as you can see, that looks pretty nice. And if you want to have the dust clouds expand even more than they do in the animation, then you can do that by adding another animation, naming it something like dust cloud action, removing all the keyframes from the previous animation that it copied from, and then animating the scale and even the rotation from here, just like we did when we were creating our sprites. After you've done that, go into the logic editor of the dust cloud, add another action actuator and get the animation that you did for the scale, turn continue off and get the end frame of the animation, and what you're then going to do to ensure the animation plays simultaneously to the previous one without cancelling it out is you're going to put it on another animation layer. So if you open the previous one, which is the one that plays the sprite sheet, that one is going to be on layer 0, while the animation to scale the dust cloud is on layer 1. And afterwards, connect the animation to the hand controller that's connected to the always sensor, and as you can see, that looks very, very nice. It may be solo, but if you go into the wireframe mode, you can see that it's definitely taking effect. And the final step to configure our VFX is to have it disappear when the VFX animation is finished, which for us is around about frame 34. So have the spawn empty selected that all our VFX is connected to, go into its logic editor, add a delay sensor, and we're going to have it so that if it's at 34, then it's going to disappear. And for it to disappear, we're going to have an edit object actuator, change the mode to end object, and connect that to the delay sensor. Name both something like end, and then instead of turning the true triggering on, set it to tap instead since we only need it to happen once. So now if you're on the game from wireframe mode, as you can see, around about frame 34, the VFX disappears. And that is all the configuration for the VFX done. So we can put it away in layer 2 by selecting all the components of the VFX, pressing M and clicking on the second layer. And now if we go into the layer list and click on the second layer, we can see it just chilling over here, ready to be spawned by our character VFX empty after our characters landed. So to make that happen, we're going to need to get the exact frame that our character lands, so we can trigger our character VFX empty to spawn the empty that has our landing dust cloud VFX attached to it. So go into the character controls logic editor, and we know that our landing animation runs in state 1. They're probably thinking we're going to go into our script, go up to the code for the idle state, and use if statements like this, sending a message to our character VFX to spawn the VFX. However, there is a better way to do it if we want to spawn objects, and that is to go into the logic editor and instead use a property sensor. Set the property to our landing animation, which is the jump to idle animation, and in the value, get the frame of the property where we want the VFX to spawn. For me, that is frame 5. However, you also want to take into consideration that the VFX can phase in first, so you'll actually see the VFX a few frames later than it's actually spawned. Therefore, I'm going to set the frame where it spawns in at frame 1. And the next part we're going to do in the property sensor settings is the reason why you would rather use a property sensor to spawn VFX, and that is because let's just say we left it as it is right now. If the property is equal to frame 1, which is just like how we would write it in the script, if jump to idle is equal to 1, then we're expecting it to send a message to the character VFX empty to spawn the VFX. However, let's just say your game suffered a frame drop, and for whatever reason it went down to like, I don't know, like 40 FPS. And because of that, it lagged and missed frame 1 of the animation. Then, you, my friend, you're screwed. Because the animation would play just fine. Let's just say it played from frame 2 onwards. But then because it missed frame 1, it's then not going to send a message to the character VFX empty, and thus it's not going to spawn our VFX. But the good thing about a property sensor is not only can we change the evaluation type to greater than, which means any frame greater than frame 1 is going to send the input, which alone will be complete nonsense since we only want it to spawn once. We don't want it to spawn every frame after frame 1. But since this is a sensor, we have the tap button, and with the tap button, we can have it so that it sends the input at any frame greater than frame 1 only once. So now if it experienced a frame drop and it missed frame 1 and it started the animation at frame 2, the sensor is going to be like, oh, I haven't sent the input yet. Let me do that. And it's going to send the input at frame 2 instead, which will look virtually the same as it did if it sent it at frame 1. And thus the problem is solved, and your VFX will still be spawned even if you have a frame drop and some of the frames in your animation are skipped. And the RanGE engine also has one more sensor called the animation event sensor, which effectively does the same thing. So for example, if I was going to use the jump to idle animation as an example, I'd go into the object properties where it says animation events, I click add, and once that's done, it's created a new animation event for the animation that I currently have active, which is the jump to idle animation. And now with this, I can go to the frame where I want it to spawn the VFX, and then in the animation event that I made, I can click add trigger, and that's going to add a new trigger for frame 1. You can leave the section next to it blank, however for me I like to describe what the trigger is for, just for easy reference. And afterwards we can minimize this, and if we go into our logic editor and look at our animation event property now, we can see our animation event is in the first event index. Obviously if you add another animation event for, let's just say for example, the idle animation, then that's going to be applied to the second one. And the trigger index is all the triggers that you made. So let's just say I made one for frame 1, and then I made another one for frame 14. The first one is going to be frame 1, and the second one is going to be the trigger we made at frame 14. And one of the reasons we may use animation event sensors over property sensors is if we have animations with multiple points where the same VFX is being spawned. Because if you take the run animation, for example, if you had VFX being spawned for every footstep, instead of having like 3-4 property sensors taking up a lot of space in the logic editor, you can instead add an animation event for the run animation. And for each frame where there's a footstep, you can add triggers. And then what you can do with these triggers is select the all button, which will have all the triggers activate the sensor. And for this, you can have true triggering turned on. So when you're working with VFX in the logic editor, you're going to be either using the property sensor or the animation event sensor. So that being said, now you know why we're not doing it via an if statement in our scripts as we would usually for things like movement. Let's continue. Name the property sensor VFX jump to idle. And now we're going to add this to our script so we can make it send a message to our character VFX empty, which as you know by now is going to be the one spawning our VFX. So go into the text editor, scroll up to the code for our idle state, and in the definition section, make a new section called VFX. And in the VFX section, add the property sensor that we've just made. And now that we have it in the script, scroll down, and underneath the idle to jump section, since we kind of want all the code relating to the idle and the jumping to be together as much as possible, and obviously the next section is leap to idle, make a new section between them and call it jump to idle. And underneath, we're going to have it so that if the jump to idle VFX property sensor is positive, we're going to send a message saying landing VFX to our character VFX empty that we named character VFX. And now that we have the message we want to send it, copy the message and go into the logic editor of the character VFX empty, add a message sensor for it to receive the message and paste the message in there. Name it landing VFX. And then to make it spawn the VFX, add an edit object actuator and leave it at add object since we want it to add an object. And the object we're going to be adding is the empty that all our VFX is attached to, which we named landing dust cloud spawn. So copy the name of that and put it in the object section of the edit object actuator and then connect it to the message sensor so the message can trigger it. Give it the same name as the message sensor. And now if we run the game, our VFX is now in the game. And already our landing animation is looking a lot more polished than it did without it. And that, my friends, is how you do it. And as you can see over here, I've applied the same thing for the footsteps, and I've also applied the dust clouds for the different landing animations. Now take this method, go forth, and go crazy.